In honor of Karnovs Revenge, I will protect my weak spot. There you go. Sorry, 2% female viewership, audience. Anyway, so some people like these videos. How would I change a game? So let's talk about how would I change Karnovs Revenge, Fighters History Dynamite. And I've said before, actually, I think Karnovs Revenge, Fighters History Dynamite wouldn't be that extremely hard of a game to change. I don't think the game needs a ton of work, you know what I mean? But let's try to make it fun. So I'll talk about a few characters today, how I would change them. Let's talk about Ray, Mizoguchi, Matlock, and Ryoko. I think that'll give a kind of a good mix of characters, and I'll go from there. But let's talk about game system stuff. What would I change? Of course, man, if I had free reign, I would do a ton of crazy stuff. But let's go off with the idea that we still want to keep the game Karnovs Revenge, right? And I think that's one of the weird things is sometimes when people talk about how they want to change a game, they start throwing just crazy shit out there. Like one of the weird things about Karnovs Revenge when I see people talk about what they change is even the dizzy stuff. And it's like, oh, I would make this character's dizzy spot not as bad. All this kind of stuff. And it's like, dude, this is one of the only gimmicks of the game. Yes, some characters are going to have better dizzy spots than others. Like, this is the gimmick of the game. Like, why? Just don't play the game. I always say a lot of times I think when people talk about changing a game or something like that, they don't actually think about things logically, right? I mean, if we're thinking about how you could change dizzy stuff, let's even look at this. Sometimes people get mad in Karnovs Revenge that, let's say a character like Mizoguchi, he might hit you with a random hurricane kick or a random DP, and boom, you got dizzy. And that can be very frustrating to lose a coin flip, if you will. And I've talked about the coin flip mentality in games and why this is very frustrating to some players. And even to me, it can be frustrating. Of course, I can admit that something can potentially be frustrating, but as many times as a character like so, let's say if we added, well, it takes more than 3 hits to dizzy a person. Maybe it takes 5 hits, whatever it might take, right? Well, what about all these characters? Like maybe you're making so a character like Mizoguchi can't coin flip you and dizzy you off a random DP. But what about your character in the first place that doesn't have multi-hit moves? Are they ever going to be able to dizzy you now? How realistic is it going to be for your character that is only hitting you with random moves randomly to be able to dizzy you now? Is this really making a character with a multi-hit move worse? Because they might be the only character that could potentially ever dizzy you then, right? So you have to look at things like logically there, right? Like, I mean, I guess you could add, maybe it takes 4 hits to dizzy a guy. So maybe you don't get coin flipped quite as much. It takes 4 hits to dizzy the guy. But on that same token, then I think you should raise the damage, or raise the life bar by another like maybe 15% or something like that, right? I also threw out, and this is a even a very bizarre idea you could put into the game that I don't think the game is complex enough to handle, but roll with me here, and I've written this before, is you could add something strange to the game. You could add something like, oh, hopefully the phone's suffering. You could add something to the game like, oh, okay, so maybe it takes 5 hits to dizzy the person now, right? But what if we added something strange that because of that, you can only be dizzied once, right? So 2 out of 3 matches, but now it takes 5 hits to dizzy the person, or maybe even 6, whoever knows what it might be. And you could potentially have a mind game then, since you can only be dizzied once out of every, a 2 out of 3 match. Now, what if we're in a position where, Mizoguchi, and this is why I said I don't think the game is complex enough to handle this, but this is an idea that you could do if they ever made a much more complex version of the game. If we're thinking about like a character like Mizoguchi, who is one of the few characters in the game who can actually aim dizzy spots, right? So you can be doing a hurricane kick loop, and when you're doing the hurricane kick loop, you either aim for a dizzy spot with a stand jab, it could be a stand kick or a duck little kick. All versions of that hit a different potential dizzy spot. So you could have a potential mind game, some kind of like narrative in the game, like, oh, the character's almost dead. I could go for the dizzy here right now and hit this dizzy spot, but it's like, but if I don't hit that, then I can save it for the next match, because then the next round I only need to hit them once in that dizzy spot to dizzy them, right? So you could have a potential mind game, a potential meta of actually saving dizzy spots. Unfortunately, like I said, although I think this is a interesting idea and would throw a interesting spin on Karnovs Revenge and maybe just fighting games in general, I don't think the game is complex enough to do this justice because not enough characters can actually do this. It's really only like a Mizoguchi thing. Very, very rare can you do this with other characters actually. But that is another idea. So I guess if you wanted to have a middle ground, I guess you could add maybe it takes 4 hits to dizzy the person, but make the life bars bigger, I guess I would say, right? That's what I guess if you wanted to. But I would not make any character's dizzy spot better or worse. Some characters got to have good dizzy spots. Some characters got to have bad dizzy spots. That's a video game. Your character can't be the best or the worst at everything, right? Anyway, would there be any other general ideas when I think of Karnovs Revenge? I do think that I wouldn't mind some, although I think you got to keep Karnovs Revenge. So, you know, the idea of like super fast jabs, you know what I mean? The game is like original Street Fighter 2 on steroids in terms of how powerful light attacks are. I'm not against that, but I do think there is a little bit too much in this game of, say, we could use a character like Ray, Mizoguchi, whoever it might be. I mean, take a character like Gene, whoever it might be. I do think there is a little bit too much of characters stand fierces are so much better as an anti-air than they're like stand roundhouse. I don't hate the idea of a stand fierce being an anti-air against a roundhouse, but I do think that some normals are just not useful enough, right? So maybe some of these roundhouses, you need to give them a bit more hang time. You need to flip around the frame data a little bit to give them more of a use. But if you know what I'm talking about in this game, you know that the ratio or the just how much better some normals are than others, it's a little too extreme. You got to give some of these other normals some kind of more of a versatility, right? Besides that, other things I would change. I would add a very, very basic, a very bare bones, very simple kind of juggle system. We're talking super turbo, even more basic than maybe super turbo, right? You know, super turbo, you can go up to 5 hits if it's super, 3 hits if it's some things, you know what I mean? I mean, you could really do it this game, I think, just maybe add dizzies or juggles only go up to 2. You know what I mean? 2 hits, that's it. But just add a little bit of spice to the game. You know what I mean? And besides that, I don't think I would mind maybe even backdashes having 1 frame of invincibility right at the start or something like that, just to get away from certain kinds of pressure strings, potentially. I don't know. Anyway, let's get into how we would change some of the characters, right? And I'll go over some of these changes, right? And remember, I don't care if a character's good or not. I would give good characters stuff too. Besides maybe Zazzy. Because Zazzy is a conundrum how you would fix, because I said before, I don't necessarily think that Zazzy is the best character in the game, but I do think Zazzy is probably one of the most scrub-a-dub broken characters ever in a game. But Ray. What would I do for Ray, right? Well, Ray is an interesting character because sometimes when I see people talk about how would they switch Ray, they talk about like, oh, dude, we would make, you know, his fireball is 5 frames slower. His wheel kick has 5 frames more recovery. And it's like, what the fuck does the character have then, dude? He has absolutely almost nothing besides his simple stuff is just that powerful, right? But how would I change Ray? Where's this motherfucker's wheel kick? Where's this motherfucker's wheel kick in his fireball, right? I mean, because you got to remember, when you're talking about a video game, just 1 frame of something can make such a dramatic difference in games, right? So what is something I think you could do? For his fireball, maybe you could give his fireball a frame more recovery, I guess. But if you did that, for sure, I would say you need to make sure the fireball does another frame of stun, right? I mean, I would be so easy going with this because the character doesn't take it. You know, this game, you want to keep Karnovs Revenge. And Karnovs Revenge is a game that thrives off of super fucking powerful bullshit moves. It's why it runs that very fine line of being scrub-a-dub and deceptively skillful. So I guess you could give it maybe another frame of recovery, but make sure it does another frame of stun when it hits. Maybe he has a little bit bigger of a hurt box, something like that, but don't drastically change the move. His wheel kick, I think you could make it maybe a frame slower, but recovery wise, I don't. I know people complain about the recovery on it a lot. I don't know if I would change the recovery, dude. Maybe a frame more startup or something, so there'd be at least some idea of a safe jump against him more so. But man, again, maybe a frame more startup, but I don't even know if I would give it a frame more recovery. It would be very, very iffy, right? Because you got to keep the powerful things about him, right? But what are new things I would actually give Ray, right? What would I give him something new? And Karnovs Revenge is an interesting game that you could actually, it would be pretty easy, I feel like, to make a new version of the game because of stuff like this. Remember, in the original fighter's history, there's actually a lot of different moves that haven't been used in like animations and all that kind of shit. So, what would be a new move I would give Ray? I think you could give Ray, maybe if you do a fireball in the air with kick, he does his wheel kick from fighter's history, the original game, right? And it's an overhead. This is definitely a game, I think, especially when you think about this game that you can, like, you know, fuzzy block to make things not even actually high or low. I think this is, this is something that you could change. So give him an air version of his wheel kick from the first game, right? And make it an overhead, right? I think it would be fun if it hit on hit that you could link off of it, but I think this would be too good because you could get into positions, I think, potentially in the game where, you know, there's kind of this like sweet spot when you're actually trying to bait the wheel kick from Ray at mid screen. And I think if the wheel kick in the air was too good and you could just like tiger knee it from that mid range, you wouldn't be able to as easily just duck mid screen versus Ray and hope that he whiffs the wheel kick and then punish. So you would definitely have to play around with how fast that version of the wheel kick is, you know, when you tiger knee it and all that kind of stuff, because you don't want it to be that you can't bait the original wheel kick as well. And so I think on hit, you'd probably just have to have it knocked down because I think if you could get a link off of it, I think that sort of idea what I'm getting at might be too strong if the move is fast. But you could even make it punishable on block when you block it standing, you know what I mean? But I think that would throw a little bit of a mix up to the game. Something like that. That might be kind of fun. What would be something else I would give him? This is where I'm getting a little bit cheesy. You could give him a dynamite DD. Okay, so a little bit cheesy, and I'm going to talk about this with other characters too when I get into this. You could give him maybe a 360 air throw in the air, right? So he has the regular DDT, which is just his air throw. Then maybe give him a 360 motion in the air with punch. And he does his DDT, but before he says dynamite DDT, right? And then what happens is this version of the air throw, it actually does a hit to the opponent's dizzy spot on their head, because if you think about Ray, he's a character who actually doesn't have a lot of attacks that aim at the opponent's head, right? When you're thinking about when you're doing combos. So I think that might be kind of fun. Make it an air version of the throw. It does more damage than the regular version of air throw. It also hits the opponent's head dizzy spot. And I would say this is Ray's move that juggles, right? So I know this sounds retarded, but, you know, just to add, it sounds a little bit weird maybe. This is Ray's one version of a move that juggles or something like that. So if he hits you with the dynamite DDT, if you were charging up, you know what I mean, the electric dynamite tackle, then he could get one hit of an electric dynamite tackle. You know what I mean? Because cap it at 2 hits. Cap this game at 2 hits for juggles, just for that little bit of extra thing. And you could even add something strange like that. Maybe if Ray did a weird combo and he hits you with the electric dynamite tackle, whatever. Then if he jumped up real quick, since throws combo in Karnovs Revenge, he could do the dynamite DDT. And then it adds one more hit at the end of that combo, right? And it hits you in the head. I think that's something pretty weird you could add to Ray. You know what I mean? You got to add new stuff to even powerful characters, right? You know what I mean? I guess I think the thing about balancing this really would be when I think about mid-screen, that range where you're just ducking, trying to bait the wheel kick. How good would the Tiger Knee version of that new wheel kick be? Is it so fast that you can't realistically still bait the regular wheel kick? You know what I mean? That would be the hardest part of balancing this, I think, when you're getting at that range. But I think you could do that, and you're still giving him something new, even though he's a new character. And hopefully, we're giving the characters that are not as good as him stuff too. So let's get to my favorite character, Mizoguchi. What would I do for Mizoguchi? Look at this motherfucker. Like I said, Mizoguchi and Karnov, some of the best designed characters I've ever seen. If you think about it, maybe they're serendipitously amazing, but cracking my back, dude. Even nowadays, I think they're interesting characters. So what would I do for Mizoguchi when I think about this character, dude? Well, when we look at his hurricane kick right here, first of all, the little kick hurricane kick I don't think has enough purpose besides excuse me. I don't think the little kick hurricane kick, it only really has kind of the purpose of very random shenanigans. Going over a fireball real quick. So what would I change about little kick hurricane kick? I would make it so the last hit of the little kick hurricane kick, he falls down when he does the falling part of that kick and it hits his overhead, because there's just no real point in it, dude. It's too slow. And you got to think about, in this game, you can jiggy while you're being hit. So it's not even a real hit on a combo. So this needs to have a purpose, right? So the last hit of the little kick hurricane kick, when you're doing it in the air, when he comes down actually with the kick and it hits you as an overhead. It needs to have a purpose, and it doesn't have a purpose as it is now, right? What else would I do when I think about Mizoguchi's hurricane kick? Would I change with it? I would make the last version of when you're doing the hurricane kick in the air, he has a different version. So when you do the last rep with hard kick, it comes out the same. And when you do the last rep maybe with the little kick, it's a bit slower and it hits the overhead. You could probably actually make both versions overheads or something like that. But remember, because this game has like fuzzy blocking. So if you're watching this video, you got to know what the fuck I'm talking about, I guess, right? Make it so on block, the last hit of that, just keep it with what I said. Let's not get too complicated, actually. We're getting too complicated for you guys. Whatever the case, like I said, in the air, make the little kick version of the hurricane kick that last hit an overhead. Because again, it doesn't always have enough purpose to actually do the full string in the air. So then you could get a sort of ghetto high-low mix-up, I guess. Do you know what I mean? And this is with fuzzy blocking, so it wouldn't even be that extremely powerful, but it needs to have a purpose. So make the last hit of the hurricane kick in the air an overhead as well, right? What else would I do for this character? We got this big tiger bazooka. Something I would do for this is I would make it so, because I feel like a lot of the times the only purpose of this move is really if you're versus Mastorius and he has not fucking charging, so you can actually get like a freebie sometimes if you're full screen, if he's not charging, or if the guy's dizzy. I think it feels too much of a gimmick. So I think something fun that would be if you charge it up and you're holding down the buttons the whole time. So it's like, and then if you hold down the buttons the whole time, he doesn't fire it. And then the next time you do that motion, he fires it immediately, and it's the big version. And it doesn't have to do, what does it do? It says it does 80 damage here. So what does this regular fireball do? It does 16. Make it just do 40. It doesn't do the whole 80 damage. It only does 40. Or even maybe that's too much. Maybe it does 30. Maybe it just does double, basically, the regular version of fireball. But it still allows you to combo off of it, and it still allows him to win a fireball war. So he still has the worst fireball in the game, basically for the most part. But now you can actually get situations in this game where you can do a sweep with Mizoguchi, and then you do the big fireball, and you just hold down the buttons, and then you don't fire it. And then you have that access now to a big fireball. It doesn't do as much damage as it does when you normally charge the whole thing up, but it actually allows him to win a fireball war, and it actually has better recovery, so he can actually combo off of it or something. I think that would make the move more versatile. It would also give you more reason to use his hard kick throw versus, his hard punch throw, because really you almost always only do the hard punch throw anyway, because you get the miscellaneous mix-up off of it. So at least now if you did a hard kick throw, I can now charge up this fireball and I can get a freebie. It adds a little bit something else to it. I think you could do that. Besides that, when we look at the big blue, I would make this his juggle move. what would I say? Because I do think when the big blue hits you in the air, I think the move should knock down. You know, most moves in this game, if not all moves, like 99% of moves in this game, when they hit you in the air, even if it's a DP, it doesn't knock you down. So, you know, when Mizoguchi whiffs the first hit of his DP, you know what I mean? If you still hit the guy with the big blue, I think it should knock down in the air. And, you know, it does a couple hits too. So you could make that juggle. And I also think you could do, what you could say from that is it juggles. And if you've actually hit Mizoguchi's and one of his hurricane kicks and, you know, the last hit of the blue one, then he can juggle with the big blue DP. But only when he's rising. And it only does 2 hits, right? Because we're capping it at that, right? We're capping it at that, right? I think you could actually even do something. And of course, that kind of like off of the hurricane kick, that would only work in the corner if it hit like that. So you don't need to worry about you're doing this mid-screen, and it's not taking away Mizoguchi's ideas of linking at the end of a hurricane kick loop the kicker, the puncher, to the regular DP. You know what I mean? But it's adding just a little bit of a different idea of a combo he can do. I would even say when I was talking about his kick throw, I would actually say his kick throw, maybe you could make his kick throw only do a pixel amount of damage. But if you were to think about something like, say, Ryoko has that big toss throw where she throws you in there. It doesn't really do any damage, but then you can get a mix-up. I think you could even do something weird for Mizoguchi, like his kick throw. Since we're giving him that big tiger bazooka charge up mid-screen, maybe his kick throw only does block damage. You know what I mean? So mid-screen, he can throw you like that. It only does block damage now, but it lets you charge up the tiger bazooka, whatever it is. And if it's in the corner, it allows you to get like a free tap of something, a hit, and then you can go for a mix-up. I think it would put a different spin on the character like that. That's what I think about Mizoguchi, right? You could potentially, like I said, if you're going to give him one tone down, you could potentially give the little punch DP one more frame of recovery or something like that, I guess. But again, you got to keep Karnovs Revenge. But I guess if that was one tone down, maybe little punch DP has 1 frame more recovery. But that's why I think you could give Mizoguchi. I think those would throw kind of like fun spins on the character, right? And give him something a little bit different. Now let's get into Matlock. Oh my God. What is a spin? What kind of spin could I put on Matlock, right? Do you see what I'm doing there? I'm so fucking clever. I know I'm fucking clever. And I'm going to say this terrible joke many times about what spin I would put on Matlock. What I would do for Matlock is I would go full blown with his spinny move. Because I'm putting a new spin on Matlock. I'm going to say this so many times you're going to be fucking sick of me saying it. So what would I do with Matlock? Here's what I would do. Matlock's, and I would go full blown with this idea, right? Because Matlock's Dragon Punch is considered one of, if not the worst Dragon Punches in the game, right? So how do we fix this move and make it interesting? First of all, okay, so how does the move work now? Little kick version knocks you down, hits you once. Hard kick version hits you 3 times. It can potentially hit you 3 times, right? What I would do though, on block, little kick version of it and hard kick version of it all make you block 3 times. And it is indistinguishable, okay? It's indistinguishable, right, on block. And what happens is, little kick version, if it hits you on hit, it only hits you once, and it knocks the guy forward. And the guy blocks it 3 times too. 3 hits of block damage, give him a little bit of a chip damage that he can do. At least if the guy blocks it, God, my hurricane kick sucks. At least if the guy blocked it, give me 3 hits of block damage, right? Hits you forward. But now the hard kick version of the hurricane kick hits you backwards. It sucks you in for 3 hits like a Ryu Super Hurricane Kick, and then you fly the wrong way. So what this does is, at least if Matlock is trying to get you out of the corner and the guy blocks it, because this move fucking sucks. I mean, half the time you're getting hit out of it, and half the time the move sucks. So at least if the guy blocks it, the guy is now in the corner. And so now at least if the guy punishes you, you're not in the corner anymore, right? And, you could make it indistinguishable like that, right? And why you could even make this better, right? Now, for this version of the move that you're tapping, right? If you're tapping, say, little kick, right? At the end of the move, he jumps backwards. And he has no recovery, and he can come down with an attack. If you're tapping hard kick when he's doing like this, he jumps forward, he hops forward, and he can still come down with an attack. And you might be thinking, wow, this sounds so fucking broken. He has this kind of ghetto DP where he can still come down and he's attacking, but then you're forgetting this is a bullshit game where characters just have powerful moves up the butthole, super fast access to DPs, whatever. So that's why I don't think this would be broken. And you're like, wow, he has 3 versions of this of his DP that now all have a purpose and are potentially indistinguishable that keep the opponent on his toes. Boom, you fixed this move. Completely easy. Right? And then another move, what would I do? His head stomp is not good enough. I think his head stomp, man, I mean, if you know this move in the game, the head stomp, I think you could double the momentum this guy gets in this game, and I don't think it would be broken potentially. His headbutt is so, or this like little Chun-Li stomp is just not good enough. So I would make the head stomp, you have more control over the move so that you don't just fly backwards or forward. You can actually kind of come back down a little bit, right? Have it, that there's actually, that you actually have some, a break in between so the opponent can't attack you, but make it so you can actually pressure with this at least somewhat realistically. And I would make this Matlock's actual juggle move. So at least if Matlock hits some kind of air move and it hit the guy, then he can do a head stomp and it juggles. And then he's coming down and while the opponent's recovering, he's trying to find out he can do some kind of left, right, high-low mix-up, something like that. Make this move better, dude. And then if you want to get even real crazy, you could even say this god-awful duck hard punch. Maybe Matlock can come down with a kick or like a little something, whatever, right? Anyway, that's what I would do for Matlock. You know what I mean? I don't think Matlock is god awful. I mean, he's not great, but I mean, I've said before, even when I was playing the game, I've actually hit Matlock's infinite in a real match. So I don't think Matlock is the worst. Yeah, I mean, I know he's considered a bad character, but he's not beyond help, I don't think, right? The character isn't beyond help. I mean, his design is beyond help. I mean, it looks like a kindergartner made him up. I mean, whoever designed him should be, put out the pasture. He's one of the ugliest characters I've ever fucking seen in my life, but gameplay-wise, I don't think he's beyond help. So, anyway. And since this video is real long, how would I change Ryoko? Ryoko is a character that I think is very interesting because although Ryoko is definitely one of the worst characters in the game, Ryoko is so potentially volatile, and you can make Ryoko so good so easily. I think Ryoko is potentially a conundrum. So, but what would I do with Ryoko to make Ryoko a little bit better, right? First of all, where's her fire throw? Which move? Fire throw. Excuse me. I would make her fire throw when she catches you on fire. This does an automatic one hit of a dizzy spot to any character's dizzy spot. So no matter when Ryoko hits you with the Mountain Storm when you catch on fire, this does a point of dizzy no matter what. No matter where your dizzy spot is on the character, the Firestorm does a point of dizzy. Now, Ryoko has this one move, you know what I mean? When you're not close up, she does that little dash animation. I would give Ryoko, maybe Ryoko is the only character in this game that has a dash, a forward dash. So she can get in a little bit easier. Give her a forward dash, dude. Maybe she's the only character in the game that has a forward dash, and you could just give it that bullshit animation where she just slightly disappears for a second to get in just a smidge closer, dude, right? Then, for Ryoko, what I'd give her that god-awful, that really fucking stupid move from the Mizoguchi game, where it's some bizarre motion, and she just like slams the guy a couple times, I think, and then she throws the guy in the air, and then she does the Mountain Storm. And such a bizarre move, but I would say give that to Ryoko. And that's Ryoko's basically move you do when the guy's dizzy. Because I feel like when the opponent's dizzy really with Ryoko, you still always do the Mountain Storm move. But if Ryoko gets you dizzy, give her that move and make it do like Half-Life. It's just fucking stupid, but kind of a gimmick, but hey, give it to her, right? And I think other than that, you know what I mean? I guess you could make that version, the little version of the throw where she just throws the guy like that. Maybe make that hits the guy's middle dizzy spot, something like that, right? So Ryoko is such a conundrum of a character, right? Because she's so potentially actually good. I think you could just what you could do, you'd probably fiddle around with some of her normals. Some of the priority on her normals, considering it's Karnovs Revenge, are kind of not the greatest, right? But I think what I would do is hell, you could even make her stand kick, maybe make that her juggle move, something like that. So when she stand kicks you, then you could jab the guy out of the air as a juggle, something like that. And like I said, keep juggles simple in this game. They only go for 2 hits, and it's only specific things that can like set it up and do it. But maybe your stand kick juggles like that, and then you can go for a mix up, something like that. But really what I would do is I would play around with just how good would it be giving Ryoko an actual dash in this game and make her the only character that has a forward dash in the whole game. And you're like, man, that's not much. And I'm like, yeah, it's not much, but she's a conundrum of a character, dude. I mean, so give her a forward dash and play around with how fast it is, how good it is. Maybe her forward dash even goes through a fireball right at the very beginning or some bullshit like that. Play around with that. I know that's not much for Ryoko, but like I said, she's a conundrum of a character because I don't think it would be too hard to make this character busted. You know what I mean? Because Ryoko already is. I feel like Ryoko already is this very cliche character. When people play Ryoko in this game, I feel like people play Ryoko like, oh, Ryoko's the worst character in the game. I'm going to try to beat you with her. Oh, I beat you with her. I'm so good. You're a scrub. And it's like Ryoko is kind of scrub-a-dubby herself, right? I mean, Ryoko, you threw me a couple of times and you won, right? I mean, she's not that hard to make too good, dude, right? I mean, yeah, she sucks, but I mean, if you played the game, you know what I mean. She sucks, but it's not like she has absolutely nothing. You could make her too good very easily. Anyway, maybe I'll do another one of these videos, like I said. So for your Ryoko, really play around. Maybe give her a kick. If she hits you with her kick, she can go for some juggles. Make the Mountain Storm actually do a hit of a dizzy, so it actually adds to dizzying the guy, which would be a lot better as well. Then when she's dizzy, give her that super powerful throw from the Mizoguchi game. And just play around with how good actually giving her a forward dash in the game would be. Anyway, maybe we'll do more of these videos. There you go. My dizzy spot is no longer protected. The end.